By the end of this lesson, you will have a clear picture of how working with rabbits is not always the same as working with ducks, and 3 principles to help decide how to best communicate with rabbits. Remember our definition of language. Language is an arbitrary system of symbols and sounds and technology used by a group of people to organize their world and communicate what is important to them. We have seen how different communicating what is important can be between languages. We saw this when we learned that the speakers of Gugu Yimitir in Australia communicate the position of objects in space in terms of north, south, east, and west, instead of with left or right, in front or behind. We also saw how simple little words we hardly notice, like on, can mean something different or need more than one word in different languages. And we learned the making movies technology, which as far as I know, only exists in English. It is not for nothing that the famous Italian director Federico Fellini said, "A different language is a different vision of life." Perhaps the most challenging and most rewarding difference between what different languages consider important is what is important to them about how people should be treated and how they communicate this. This is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. Even if we knew all the words in a new language, it's possible that what we say when developing relationships with others in our language is not the same as what speakers of the new language say. And this is perhaps the most important reason why learning a new language is not so much about translating words from your native language word for word into a new language. A classic example of this is that German speakers often ask me to translate Guten Appetit, because they feel the need to say this in order to be polite before starting to eat a shared meal. For them, not saying it at the start of a meal would be impolite. Translating it is easy. Good appetite. The harder part is to explain that no one says this or anything similar at an English-speaking meal. For English speakers, saying something like this at the start of a meal is not important. Translating word for word means that you stay in what your language considers important and may miss the different vision of what other languages, in our case English, consider important. That is what this lesson is about. What do you see in this picture? Press pause and think about it for a moment. Most people see a duck. But if you look starting from the top left, that is, seeing a flat nose and a mouth there, and then seeing what looks like the duck's bill or mouth as ears, you will probably see a rabbit. Once you can see both a duck and a rabbit, things get interesting. You cannot see a rabbit and a duck at the same time. Press pause and try. When thinking about your work with English speakers, I would like to suggest seeing the way that you think about relationship communication in your native language as a duck, and seeing the way that relationship communication works in English as a rabbit. Just like it is not possible to see the duck and the rabbit at the same time, it is also not possible to think and act as a duck and as a rabbit at the same time. Thinking of your work with English speakers in terms of ducks and rabbits is about developing a different perspective, a different vision of life. That means that doing your work in English with English speakers is about thinking about it, doing it, and practicing it from a rabbit perspective. A first way of making this concrete is that in cultural studies, there are 2 principles for professional customer relationships. Number 1, if we can work well together, maybe we can be friends. And principle number 2, if we can be friends, maybe we can work well together. It is not possible to follow both these principles at the same time, just like seeing the duck and the rabbit at the same time is not possible. The first principle says that for some people, working well together is required for good professional relationships. For these people, if the work isn't going well, then maintaining a good relationship gets harder, if not impossible. Let's call these, in the extreme, duck expectations. For ducks, the quality of the work, how well and how effectively the goal was reached, is the more important of the two priorities. The second principle says that some people need the relationship to be good in order to work well together. For these people, the relationship is the most important priority. Let's call them rabbit expectations. Cultural researchers argue that the first principle, and there are exceptions, dominates German-speaking countries and Finland. According to these same researchers, the second principle tends to hold, and again there are always exceptions, for the rest of the world. And that includes people from English-speaking countries and most people who speak English as a second language. The many anecdotes that American workers miss the private social invitations from colleagues and bosses when working in Germany, and that German professionals sometimes feel uncomfortable about the importance of such social invitations when working in America, Australia, or England, are examples of this. In Germany, and again there are exceptions, the line between private and professional life is like the Berlin Wall. There are only a few checkpoints where the line is crossed. For rabbits, the line is more fluid, like the German-Swiss border in the Bodensee, the biggest lake in Germany connecting Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. How rigid or fluid this line is a key difference between ducks and rabbits. What about you? When it comes to your professional activities, would you say you are more of a duck or a rabbit? What about your company and your country culture? Would you say that how people in your company work with customers is more or primarily focused on work, ducks, or on relationships? To do your work well, it is very important that the people you are working with want to cooperate with you. That is, that they want to work well with you. And for rabbits, this depends a lot on the continuous quality of the relationship. The important question then becomes, what do rabbits need to feel good and want to cooperate with you, and what are you doing to make this happen? Knowing this can help you work better with rabbits, and it could perhaps even be good to do the same thing with ducks. Even if ducks are not used to being treated like rabbits, they just might like it. One way to decide how well you respect the relationship when dealing with rabbits is to compare what you do against what it means to be polite. Because being polite is something we all do to build and respect relationships. As children, people are always telling us to be polite. Why? Here is the Cambridge definition of being polite. Behaving in a way that is socially correct and shows understanding of and care for other people's feelings. Notice how this definition does not say socially correct in private. Showing understanding and care for other people's feelings is, by this English definition, important in private and at work. The people telling us to be polite when we are young often tell us when something we do is not polite and give us positive feedback when something we do is polite. But these are just examples that we have to learn one at a time. Wouldn't it be nice if there were principles against which we could measure how polite or impolite we are being? You may not believe this, but politeness is its own field of academic research. Some of the leaders in this field, such as Leach, Grice, and Levison, amongst others, have done a lot of work to reduce the complexity of politeness, with categories such as positive and negative face, positive and negative politeness, cooperative and relevance maxims, and such well-known ideas as saving face. I have reduced these many overlapping concepts to 3 easily understood and remembered maxims. The first maxim, the freedom maxim, maximize the other person's freedom. Number 2, the comfort maxim. Maximize the other person's comfort. And number 3, the empathy maxim. Maximize expressions of empathy. The freedom maxim. Everything that you do that reduces the other person's freedom is impolite. For example, when you have a guest, it is impolite to give them something to drink before asking them if they would like something to drink and what they would like to drink. When arresting someone, on the other hand, the police do not ask, "Would you like to come with us?" They say, "Come with us," because there's no need for being polite and respecting someone's freedom when arresting them. The comfort maxim. Everything you do that helps make people feel comfortable is very polite. In English, for example, it's very common to say both to a guest at home and to customers, "Please, make yourself comfortable." This is not something often said in a professional context in Germany. That makes it an example of the English language expressing that the quality of the relationship, including the comfort of the other person, is very important, even in a professional context. The empathy maxim. Communicating with words and body language that you empathize with people's needs, concerns, worries, and feelings at home and at work is very polite. People who need to feel that the relationship is good in order to work well need to hear and see that the person they are working with appreciates and respects their feelings, thoughts, and worries. Does what you say and how you say it consistently communicate that your relationship with rabbits, and perhaps even ducks, is just as important as the work you need to do with them? And how much of what you say and how you say it, number 1, maximizes the freedom of the other, number 2, maximizes the other's comfort, and number 3, maximizes expressions of empathy. I'm looking forward to putting these insights into practice in the upcoming lessons to support you doing your job well and showing rabbits, perhaps even a few ducks, that you understand and care about their feelings and relationship expectations. See you there.